What is craft? Is craft linked to skill? Is craft mastered in the hands? Do crafted objects need to have a utility or purpose? Is craft synonymous with tradition, meaning made with certain classic materials, like beads or glass? Is craft gendered? What is the difference between art and craft? Craft scholars have been asking these questions for decades and are working to dismantle craft stereotypes. Craft is as intellectually important as fine art, but it is not the same. Craft lives, breathes, and speaks. Craft tells stories about the land and stories about family. It tells stories about our domestic lives and stories about the materials it is made with. It both embraces and breaks with tradition and is alive with feeling and humor. In the NWT, craft is our art. It is our identity. It tells our stories. The stories told by craft here in the Northwest Territories are both the stories of tradition and culture that belong to the Northern Indigenous peoples, as well as the stories of the settlers who moved here and carried their home traditions with them in the form of their crafts.
Craft tells material stories. The birds in this case are all made of different materials: wood, felt. Each material lends a different meaning to the bird. Wood, for example, is strong, full of character. Felted wool is soft and tender. We experience each bird differently because each material has a unique language. Craft also tells beautiful stories, and it takes skill to create beauty. In the flowers here, we notice exquisite color and form and pattern long before we notice the expert technique. Although craftspeople work very hard, their skill isn't always meant to be noticed. Skill is just a means of arriving at beauty and at a finished form well. Craft tells family stories. In the NWT, craft often passes through successive generations. When studying Northern craft, it's possible to trace unique family traits, the way an experienced beater or a carver or a hide tanner's own style has been adopted into the work of younger craftspeople. Some craftspeople are purists, adhering to tradition. Others, though, actively work against it. So this piece here is an anti-quilt, and it's not like a traditional quilt at all. It's not meant to be warm or cozy. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's a bit of a mess. The craftsperson intentionally made it this way. He sabotaged the form of the traditional quilt. So at the top, you see the squares are pieced together well, and then as you move down the quilt, you see the squares get looser and less attached, and it's in disarray. This piece is a metaphor for a relationship that breaks down and falls apart. In this example, the craftsperson found this unfinished rug hooking by a great aunt of hers. You'll notice that the center square is left unfinished, and that was intentional. It creates a sort of open and modern abstract composition. It also allows for successive generations to perhaps add in some rows of color on their own. You'll notice here too that the craftsperson has used a variety of fabrics. And interestingly, you'll see she's used the nylons of her great aunt, and she's used the underwear of her great uncle. Craft tells stories about our daily lives. Craft, much more than art, meshes with our daily lives. We might look at art, we might think about art, but we use and wear craft. Craft is often close to our skin. It feeds and nourishes us, and it helps us work. Craft can become an extension of our own bodies. In the North, handmade mittens can take on a life of their own. Over years of use, they get worn in, like old souls. Sometimes a mitten might take it into their heads to go on a solo adventure. Craft is personal, and every mitten here has a story to tell. If you look at this brand new mitten, you'll see how the beadwork describes the wind. These flowers seem to describe an experience with movement. These old mittens here, each one has a hole or a stain that tells the story of regular life. In the NWT, craft is our art. It is our identity. It tells our story.